the war veteran and the unexpected bond. Jack Turner sat alone in his small apartment, the late afternoon sunlight filtering through faded curtains. The quietness of his surroundings was profound, broken only by the ticking of an old clock hanging on the wall. At 85 years old, Jack had grown accustomed to solitude. His small one-bedroom apartment, filled with memorabilia from his past, felt more like a shrine to the life he once lived than a home. Framed photographs on the walls and shelves told the story of a life filled with joy, love, and heartbreak. Jack was a veteran, a man who had served his country with pride during one of its most tumultuous times. Decades ago, he had been a young soldier, full of energy and purpose, ready to face the challenges of war. He bore the scars of those years, his left eye lost to an explosion, his hearing severely damaged, but those physical wounds paled in comparison to the emotional pain he carried. Jack had lost his only son, Nathan, in a distant war. Nathan had followed in his father's footsteps, serving bravely, only to have his life cut short. That loss was a blow Jack never recovered from. A few years later, his beloved wife, Emma, passed away after a brief but devastating battle with cancer. In the blink of an eye, Jack's world crumbled. Now, his days were spent in silence, his life reduced to a predictable routine. He would wake up, make himself a simple breakfast, and spend hours gazing out the window at the bustling city streets below. Sometimes he would watch children playing in the park or couples walking hand in hand, their laughter echoing faintly. These moments brought bittersweet memories of his own family, now gone. On a cold autumn evening, as the wind howled outside and leaves rustled along the streets, Jack decided to venture out. It wasn't a decision he made lightly. Leaving his apartment felt like stepping into an unfamiliar world. But something within him urged him to visit the war memorial at the city park. It had been years since he last went, and tonight he felt a pull he couldn't ignore. The memorial stood quietly at the heart of the park, its tall stone walls etched with the names of soldiers who had given their lives. As Jack approached, his cane tapping against the pavement, he felt a wave of emotions wash over him. His hand trembled as he traced the names on the cold stone, pausing when he reached one name in particular, Nathan Turner. The sight of his son's name carved into the wall brought tears to Jack's one good eye. He whispered a prayer, his voice barely audible in the wind. As he stood there, lost in thought, Jack noticed a figure leaning against a nearby tree. The young man's shoulders were slouched, and his head was bowed as though he carried an invisible weight. Something about him caught Jack's attention. Despite the chill in the air, the young man seemed frozen in place, staring at the memorial. Jack felt a pull toward him, a sense of familiarity he couldn't explain. "Excuse me, son," Jack said gently as he approached. "Are you all right?" The young man looked up, startled. His face was pale, his eyes red and glassy, as if he had been crying. "I'm fine," he mumbled, though his voice betrayed him. Jack offered a kind smile. "It's not the kind of night to be out here alone. What brings you to the memorial?" The young man hesitated before answering. "My dad's name is on this wall," he said quietly. "He died in the war when I was just a kid. I come here sometimes to feel close to him." Jack's heart ached at the words. "What's your name?" he asked. "Brian Carter," the young man replied. "Well, Brian," Jack said, gesturing to a nearby bench. "Why don't we sit down for a bit? It's too cold to be standing out here." They sat together on the bench, the wind rustling through the trees above them. At first, they didn't speak, the silence between them filled only by the sounds of the park. Slowly, Brian began to open up. He spoke about his father, a soldier who had died heroically in service, Dad leaving behind a grieving wife and a son too young to fully understand the magnitude of his loss. "I don't remember much about him," Brian admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "Just bits and pieces." Jack nodded, understanding all too well the pain of losing someone you love. He shared his own story, of Nathan, of Emma, of the years spent grappling with the loneliness that followed their deaths. For the first time in a long while, Jack felt understood. Here was someone who carried a similar burden, someone who knew the weight of grief. In the weeks that followed, Jack and Brian began meeting regularly at the park. Their conversations grew deeper, spanning topics from war and family to dreams and regrets. Brian often brought coffee, while Jack would sometimes bring a chessboard, eager to teach the younger man the game. Their unlikely friendship became a source of comfort for both of them. Jack found himself looking forward to their time together. For so long, he had felt invisible, a relic of the past in a world that had moved on without him. But with Brian, he felt seen. He admired the young man's resilience and appreciated his curiosity about the past. Brian, in turn, respected Jack's wisdom and drew strength from his stories of perseverance. As the friendship grew, Jack began to open up more about his struggles with loneliness. He confessed that the days felt long and empty, that he often wondered what purpose his life still held. Brian listened intently, his own pain mirrored in Jack's words. "You're not alone," Brian said one day. "Even when it feels like it, you're not. You've got me." But as their bond deepened, Jack began to notice things that unsettled him. Brian's questions about his apartment, its location, size, and condition became more frequent. At first, Jack dismissed it as harmless curiosity, but over time, the questions became more pointed. One day, Brian suggested that Jack consider selling the apartment to secure his future and live more comfortably. Jack's instincts, honed through years of military service, told him something wasn't right. Troubled, he confided in his neighbor, Mrs. Daniels, a kind woman who had lived in the building for decades. "He's a nice enough kid," Jack said, "but something doesn't feel right." Mrs. Daniels frowned. "Jack, you've been through too much to let your guard down. Be careful. Trust your instincts." Taking her advice to heart, Jack started paying closer attention. He noticed how Brian's interest in his apartment seemed to overshadow their other conversations. One day, Jack overheard Brian on a phone call, speaking in hushed tones about an opportunity. A sinking feeling settled in Jack's stomach. Determined to uncover the truth, Jack reached out to a veterans organization for advice. They helped him investigate, and Jack's worst fears were confirmed. Brian was part of a scheme targeting elderly individuals, attempting to manipulate them into selling their homes. Heartbroken, Jack confronted Brian. "Why, Brian?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger and disappointment. "I trusted you." Brian looked away, guilt written all over his face. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I needed the money. I didn't mean to hurt you." Jack's voice softened, but his pain was evident. "You don't understand what you've done. I thought we were friends." Brian's arrest came swiftly, but the betrayal left a deep scar. For days, Jack avoided the park, retreating into the solitude of his apartment. The friendship he had cherished now felt like a cruel joke, reopening old wounds of loss and loneliness. Word of Jack's ordeal spread, and the local community rallied around him. Neighbors began visiting, bringing meals and offering companionship. The Veterans Organization invited Jack to events where he reconnected with old comrades and found solace in their shared experiences. One afternoon, Jack received an unexpected visit from a young woman named Lily. She was Brian's sister. Tearfully, she apologized for her brother's actions and thanked Jack for the kindness he had shown him. "My brother lost his way," she said, "but you gave him something he hadn't had in years: compassion." Jack forgave her, finding peace in letting go of anger. Through the support of his community and the connections he rebuilt, Jack found a renewed sense of purpose. Jack began volunteering at the Veterans Center, mentoring younger veterans and sharing his wisdom. He found joy in teaching chess to children and sharing stories with those eager to learn from his experiences. His days, once filled with silence and sorrow, were now alive with laughter and camaraderie. Jack's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community. It reminds us that even in the face of betrayal and loss, hope can be found in unexpected places. Jack's journey teaches us to trust our instincts, cherish genuine connections, and remain open to the kindness of others. Jack's story is just one of many that inspire and remind us of the beauty of human connection. If this story moved you, we invite you to become a part of our community. Subscribe to Life Stories 365 to hear more heartfelt tales of resilience, compassion, and triumph over adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to life.